Hi, everyone. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to write a perfect introduction for your TDA. We're just going to focus on the introduction. Now, once I share with you the formula for the perfect introduction, you are going to be able to use this formula for every single introduction for every single TDA that you ever have. And it will be a good way for you to follow so that you know that you have a solid introduction. So the first step in writing a strong introduction, so we're going to go with the first sentence. The first sentence of your TDA, you should always include the title of your story. You should include the author of the story, and you should include the genre of the story. This proves to the person that's reading it that you know what story you're talking about, who is the author, and the genre. It presents the picture that you are actually very knowledgeable about your the passage you read. In the second sentence, you are going to include a very quick summary. You're going to bring the reader up to speed. What is the story about in about 10 words or less? So we're going to model this in a minute, and I'm going to use a package for Mrs. Jewls. Since you're all familiar with a package for Mrs. Jewls, I'm going to model this using a package for Mrs. Jewls in just a moment. The third and final sentence of your TDA introduction, you're actually going to answer the prompt. And this is where you're going to use part of the words from the prompt into the sentence to make a general statement about it. Now, if you want to add a little icing to it, meaning you want it to really stand out, you could do a fourth sentence. And this fourth sentence, sorry about the little notification, for some reason it wasn't writing. This fourth sentence could include your main ideas. But the thing is that you have to do this sentence after you've written your other parts of your graphic organizer. So that's why I'm putting it in purple, because you're going to have to, you can't write it before. The first three sentences can be written before you even write your TDA. But the fourth sentence would require you first to do the rest of the graphic organizer and then come back around to it. So I'm going to, let's just review our prompt from a package for Mrs. Jewls. So here we have the prompt for a package for Mrs. Jewls, and you all should be very familiar with this. And I'm going to use this in order to write our TDA prompt. Now, generally, if you're talking about a novel, it should be underlined. But a package for Mrs. Jewls is a short excerpt from the novel, and that's why we use quotation marks. If it's a short piece of writing, then it's quotation marks. If it's the full novel or full book, that is when you underline it. So as a general rule, most of our things would be underlined. Most of our titles of books would be underlined. But in this case, we have it in quotation marks because a package for Mrs. Jewls is like a short story that's found within The Wayside School is Falling Down, which would be underlined. Okay, let me read the TDA prompt. In a package for Mrs. Jewls, the author uses many elements of humor to write an entertaining story for students. Review the elements of humor below. Write a response that details how the author skillfully uses humor in this story. Use evidence from the story to support your response. Now, just a reminder, we are just going to be writing the introduction, and we have all the information we need right here, right now, to write that introduction. So if you remember, let me go back to our whiteboard. If you remember, sentence number 1 is you include the title, the author, and the genre. So let me begin by doing this. Now, you might not remember those things right now because it's been a while since we've read A Package for Mrs. Jewls, but I'm going to refresh your memory here with this. Okay, so the first sentence, title, author, genre. And remember, I'm using quotation marks because this is a short story found within the novel Wayside School is Falling Down. So A Package for Mrs. Jewls by, and the author was Louis Sahar. Have any of you read Holes or watched the movie Holes? That is the same author as Holes. So A Package for Mrs. Jewls, by Louis Sahar, is a humorous fiction text. Remember, we talked about the elements of humorous fiction. So there is sentence number 1. A Package for Mrs. Jewls by Louis Sahar is a humorous fiction text. Boom. First sentence done. This can be applied to every other text. A Royal Mystery by, and I don't know the author right now, I'll have to look it up. Author's name is a realistic fiction piece, or is a play. Wasn't it a play? Is a drama, is a play. So there are a lot of different ways you could say that. Off and Running by, and then you find the author, is a realistic fiction piece. So the first sentence stays the same no matter what. So let's go on to the second sentence. The second sentence is a quick summary in 10 words or less. This, I might have to go on the next line. Nah, I think that'll be fine. This story is about a teacher, Mrs. Jewls. Okay, let me make that longer. Mrs. Jewls that is trying to teach her students about, what was it? Gravity. And that's all you need, just to show everybody, oh, I know what this story was about. So, but you don't want to give too much away because you're going to be telling everyone about the different humorous fiction elements in your main idea sentences. Okay, so then we go on to the third sentence. The third sentence says, answer the prompt. Whoop, I forgot what the prompt was. So let's go back. What is the prompt? In A Package for Mrs. Jewls, the author uses many elements of humor to write an entertaining story for students. Review the elements of humor below. Write a response that details how the author skillfully uses humor in this story. What are they asking us to do? To describe how the author uses humor in the story. So let's go back. Oh, where's my whiteboard? There's my whiteboard. Okay, so now let's go back and remember, don't give away the answer totally in your first introduction, or else there'll be nothing to write about. So you could say the author, and if you want to sprinkle a little icing or little sprinkles on top, you would say the author, Louis Sahar, skillfully, use the words that are in the prompt, uses humor or the elements of humor in many ways. So the third sentence is always turning the prompt into a sentence, making it a reality. So far, sentence 1, we have the title, the author, and the genre. Sentence 2, a quick summary. Sentence 3, answer the prompt. Now, the fourth sentence, if you want to include the fourth sentence, you would actually use your main ideas from this prompt. So you'd have to go down to main idea 1. The author first uses humor through unusual characters. Or you could say all three in one sentence. The author uses humor through unusual characters, unusual events, and then maybe your main idea 3 was an unexpected ending. So you could actually say those 3 right on there, and it doesn't give too much away because you're going to still give away your proof later, but it actually prepares the reader for what they're going to be reading. So the author uses humor through unusual characters, unexpected, let's see if I can get that, good, unexpected events, and an unusual ending. Oh, but Mrs. Flagg, what if I used alliteration instead of unusual ending? That's okay. You would just plop alliteration in there. So no matter which of the 3 main ideas you put in there, you could change that around based on those main ideas. So listen to how strong this introduction is. A Package for Mrs. Jules by Louis Sahar is a humorous fiction text. This story is about a teacher, Mrs. Jules, that is trying to teach her students about gravity. The author, Louis Sahar, skillfully uses the elements of humor in many ways. The author uses humor through unusual characters, unexpected events, and an unusual ending. This is a very strong introduction, and this could be used in every single TDA that you do this year, and then even on the PSSAs. This proves that you read the story. It proves that you know who the author is, what the title is, and what the genre is. This is a very strong introduction. What I'd like you to do now is I would like you, since we did this together, I would like you to practice. Go back to your A Royal Mystery TDA, and I would like you to practice writing an introduction with your teacher now. Some of you have Mrs. Schmidt, others of you have me. And so that is what I want you to do next, is use this formula for the perfect TDA introduction to write your perfect introduction for A Royal Mystery. And then this will help you for the TDA when we do the introduction for Off and Running.